Hey everybody, Clearbear, and this is my special guest.
Ian.
So Ian, how do you identify?
I identify as Hispanic and Latino.
Do you know where these terms come from? Honestly.
No, I don't. I don't know where they come from. Come from people using them. And, yeah.
So these terms, Latino, Hispanic, Mexican, El Salvadorian, etc. These terms are created historically by European white people who came from Europe and imposed this on the indigenous population of this continent.
Yeah.
And basically forced these terms. You're Mexican now, you can't speak your native language. You speak Spanish, you have to practice a Catholic religion. Mm-hmm. Same thing with Latino and Hispanic.
Same thing with Latinx.
Same thing with Latinx. It still has that Latin in there, which is still Eurocentric.
Yeah.
And again, what we're trying to bring out to the community is the majority of quote unquote Latinos actually are native people. They have a valid indigenous identity, right? And given that fact, do you see yourself changing your the way you identify to indigenous or native in some degree?
Yeah, I mean, I do think I am somewhat indigenous, but I don't know what percentage, and I don't know like my history, my personal lineage just goes back to my grandparents. Like I don't know past my great grandmother on my father's side. Don't know like much, but they were all from Mexico. Everybody. So.
And do you know that the demographic of Mexico is like 85-90% Native American, indigenous?
Yeah.
So the chances of you being indigenous is like, I mean, it's pretty obvious right now. Just looking at you, you're fitting in pretty much any reservation, right? But we're trying to bring that out there and just get our people to be comfortable with identifying as native, identifying as indigenous, because that history has been suppressed and
definitely
attempted to be exterminated by whites for a long time. To not be proud of being native, to be ashamed of your brown skin. Para mejorar la raza. Better the race. Don't be with a brown person, be with a white person. Right? Again, that's when you breed a white supremacy and the way we identify, that creates a brown inferiority. Shame of who we are. Shame of being native. There's nothing wrong with being native. We're on our damn land.
No, definitely.
We're on our land. This is who we are.
This is who we are. I mean, that goes into my me personally, being somebody that's second generation American, pretty much, and not understanding Spanish, but not speaking it fluent, because my family thought it would be better because of stigma at the time, because of the hardships that they went through with speaking another language other than English, that they thought it would be that I didn't need to learn Spanish. So I mean, I feel the effects of the push of the ideas that the Eurocentric stuff that you're talking about. I see it. I see it daily as a person. Man. So I got you.
Most of our peoples, unfortunately, they don't see it like that. Yeah. They try to look away from the fact that, they say brown pride, but in the same breath, they'll be promoting a lot of Eurocentric European things that were forced on our people. Right?
I use the old term Chicano. When I was in college, of course, it was Chicano studies, so I guess that's kind of what that's what I grew up with, that's what I identify with, and that's what I continue to call myself to this day. I identify that.
Awesome. Next question is, do you know where that term comes from, Chicano?
Oh, man, it's a lot of debate. I think when I was in college, we debated the existence of that. Some of it said it has to do with coming from the word mexica, Chicano, and then I guess the term came out during the whole Pachuco era with Calo, but I'm not sure.
One of the things we do in this organization is we talk about where our labels come from, right? So we talk about where Latino, Hispanic, Mexican, Mestizo, Salvadorian, etc., where those terms come from. One of those being Chicano. And something we always like to tell members of the community is some of the racist origins of the word Chicano. Like, have you heard of Jose Vasconcelos?
It rings a bell, but not too familiar with it. I have the name.
He was a secretary of Mexican education, right? And he created this idea called.
Oh, sorry, I didn't realize.
This idea called the cosmic race, la raza
cósmica, yeah.
and that's used a lot in Chicano circles. And he was a Nazi propagandist. He wrote for a Nazi magazine in Latin America, and he was a Nazi. He was a member of the Nazi Party of Latin America. And again, a lot of our community members, unknowingly, and that's completely valid. A lot of people just don't know this fact, but he created these concepts, and then we kind of run with it. We're just trying to educate the community on that. Another thing is we talk about reconnecting with our indigenous identity, right? So, knowing this fact, do you see yourself in any form, in any level, identifying as indigenous or native?
Mestizo.
Mestizo.
Yeah, if it's not Chicano, it's definitely mestizo. Yeah.
I hear you. And another thing with mestizo is
the mixture of the races, yeah.
That's where it comes from, right? That's the definition of it. But what it was used in was a caste system.
Yeah, the caste system, yeah.
And that was it defined mestizos as subhuman to peninsulares, criollos, castizos,
Paso yeah, all those, yeah.
So it was like a racial marker, and it defined our people as subhuman. I know some circles want to take it back, mestizo back. Some people don't. And again, how does that make you feel? How does that make you feel, knowing that that was posted in cities, towns, comunidades, pueblos, of being marked inferior to the white man?
Yeah, to the European.
Yeah.
Well, like I said, it's teach their own. But if you say that, the other term is of California, right? Because I'm from California, and unless you identify as California, it's that growing up with Mexican tradition and roots, and then American values, and then kind of that intermittent segue between that, not that survival, but just the mixing of the two cultures, and then kind of creating your own. So California is one that I use, and I know a lot of people the first thing they think is when you talk about Mexico is to identify with the Aztec. My answers are not Aztec. We come from Zacatecas, so Zacateco from the Central Plateau.
Mine as well.
Yeah, so that's kind of what I'm right now in the process of going back and looking into the Zacateco history, because we do have ruins there in a place called Chico Mosto.
Yes.
That's where my ancestors come from. So right now, that's kind of where I'm taking my journey, because we can, if you're gonna be, it's like being Navajo and identifying as Lakota or somebody else. So so we have to know our history. I mean, in order to understand how we need to go back and trace that history. And for me, in the process, it's going back and looking at it and studying that Zacateco history.
Exactly. And just to echo your point, there's 68 different tribes in Mexico alone, right? So a lot of us, we kind of get this idea that we're indigenous, and then we jump onto this Mexica label, not knowing and kind of bypassing our indigenous roots that may be from, for example, Zacatecas or Michoacan or Baja, Yucatan, etc. Again, there's more than just Aztec in Mexico. Back at it again. This is Naya, and this is my very special guest,
Eric. Nice to meet you all.
So Eric, how do you identify?
I identify as Latino, specifically American Mexican, only because I was born here.
Okay.
But definitely in tune to my Mexican roots. Yeah.
So, do you know where those terms come from?
As far as where they come from, I know it varies on where I've been born, but as far as my roots go, I've been trying to dive into lately, back into my Mexican roots. So where I was born, where my grandparents came from, the struggle, the work ethic, the language, and I know there's a lot of lost culture by assimilating when coming to the U.S. So with that's why I would say I'm a little more American than Mexican, but I'm trying to kind of grasp that a little better, because I feel that's what really identifies me.
And again, there's no right or wrong. Thank you for sharing so far.
Yep.
Did you know the terms Latino, Hispanic, Mexican, El Salvadorian, etc.? These terms are actually created by white Europeans that came over to this continent and imposed these identity labels on the indigenous population.
Yes. Yeah, and that's something that you see on applications for everything that exists, for jobs, for the census, And with that, you also lose people's identities. All you really have is like Latino or Hispanic.
Given the historical fact that these terms were actually created through genocide of our indigenous ancestors,
Yeah.
do you see yourself to some degree identifying as indigenous or native to some level? Yes.
Oh, heavily. Ironically, it's happening now versus like way earlier in my life because of the types of health that I want to take care of, my mental health, my physical, when it comes to nutrition, my digestive system. I learned that deeper, like far back in history, we weren't carnivorous. We would just have like a vegan, plant-based diet.
Yes.
And that goes back to our indigenous communities. And with that, we have indigenous tongues. I know none of that. I know not one. And I can see that we've been kind of slowly pushed away from all of that.
Are you aware in Latin America, quote unquote, there's a lot of looking down on being indigenous. There's a lot of para mejorar la raza, better the race. Be with someone who's white or white passing. Don't be in the sun too long because you don't want to look like an Indio. You don't want to look dark. You don't want to look native. Like that's something bad, but it's really hypocritical because we are native people as well. We have a valid indigenous identity. Were you aware of that?
Not growing up. Later on, I did learn that. But the irony, it is, and the irony is too that like the darker complexion folks, they were less prone to like having skin cancer. Mm-hmm. You had better skin, and that sucks. Like our well-being is what's most important, right? But we're so much in our head. It's like being white is right, and I did not like that at all.
As my race, I identify myself as an American of Mexican descent. My mom, American and Mexican descent that's how I identify myself.
Do you know where the term Mexican comes from?
I don't, to be honest with you, I don't. I mean, from the country Mexico, I would believe, but I don't know where it comes from.
So our organization would basically go around and we just ask the community members these questions and spread the knowledge of where some of these terms come from, like Mexican. Okay. This was created by criollos, which were Spaniards that were born in the quote-unquote New World.
Okay.
And they imposed these identities on the native population so that they would forget and completely, essentially erase their native identity, their native roots, in return for the Mexican. And if Mexican is not a race, Mexican is a nationality.
I would imagine, since the Spaniards came and conquered.
Like American is a nationality.
Yeah.
Or even El Salvadorian.
Yep. My wife is El Salvadorian.
So knowing that, and also spreading the fact that the majority of Mexico is mixed race Native American or full-blooded Native American,
Mm-hmm.
do you consider yourself to any extent, any degree, indigenous to this land? Yes, sir.
Indigenous to this land? Yeah, I would believe so. Yeah, because at this point, if by land you mean a continent, then yeah, I mean, white people came from this continent. I'm pretty sure I have some Spanish in me, but I also know from the color of my skin and just some of the things, some of the characteristics, I have indigenous blood in me for sure. I haven't done those tests, but I would imagine so. Yes.
And what does that mean to you, if anything at all?
It means a lot to me because I think that there's a lot of qualities to every race, right? I could tell you that whether I'm Aztec or Mayan, we were very advanced in astrology and just medicines and all that. And so building, obviously, from pyramids and all that in the city. So I would imagine, I would feel that it's a blessing to me, so. And probably some of the Spanish too. There's something. That's what I am. I didn't choose it. I was born there, and I embrace it, and I try to make the best out of it. So.
Do you think? Thank you for your answer. I just want to say that was amazing.
Thank you.
Really good at forward-taking. Really good at speaking. That was great. Another thing I want to ask is that given the fact that a lot of these terms were created with historically genocidal intent, they were forced on a lot of our people. Do you think that there should eventually be some sort of new term, or do you think many of us should start being more proud of our indigenous roots? I know in Mexico there's a lot of hatred or frowning upon being indigenous.
I don't think so, man. That's just my take. That's just my take. I think we are where we are. I identify as Mexican. I mean, that's how I was brought up, and I'm gonna be the best that I can. You know, I'm gonna teach my kids and work with my subordinates the best that they can be. You know what I mean, and represent. I'm never shy away from who I am. I always say I'm Mexican, but I'm also proud to be American. You know, so I'm proud of who I am. I try to make the best out of it, not only for myself but also for my family and whoever is surrounded with me. And, you know, but I'm also not going to hold somebody back from their beliefs. If somebody wants to, you know, pursue that and change the name or whatever, then that's but for me, I'm happy where I'm at and just make the best out of it, and that's how I feel.
So you're comfortable with genocidal terms because
it is a genocidal term. You could say that, but it is what it is. Like you can't change that at this point. And if you change it, it's still gonna be what it is. It was a genocidal term. It was. They did come and commit genocide, but let's just make the best out of it. Let's own it. You know what I mean? They created it. We own it.
Yeah, everyone. Thank you for watching our YouTube video, our I Am YouTube video. Please like, comment, share, subscribe. I think the takeaway here today was, again, our people, they need a lot of help. And they need to be more aware of our indigenous identity, our native roots, because again, history has suppressed our ancestral truth, our wisdom, and it's really crucial that we get on board with this movement. We get on board with educating ourselves and recognizing who we are on our own land. I also want to say that I learned so much today. Not all of it is a negative, because with as many people as I talked to, and with as many negatives as there was, there's also many, many, many positives. And one of those positives is that I'm learning so much. I'm learning about where our people stand. I'm learning where they see themselves, how they see themselves, how they see indigeneity, how they see themselves. And it's a good thing. It's a good thing to know. Thank you. And please don't forget, please support our fundraiser. We're raising funds for community protection for our peoples who are protesting against kids in cages, who are standing up for the injustice and mistreatment of our people. So please, please, please support. If you can't donate money, that's fine. Please share it and spread it all across to your family members, your friends, acquaintances, everybody. Thank you so much. Stay brown, stay proud. Oh.